What if I told you that the real reason you can't lose weight has nothing to do with how much you eat, but when you eat and what your body is doing while you're asleep? For decades, we've been told that calories are the villain. Count them, cut them, and you'll get slimmer. But millions of people do that and still fail. Why? Because the body doesn't burn fat on command. It obeys insulin. And if you understand one simple insulin trick, you'll finally see why some people lose weight faster, easier, and keep it off without starving themselves. Let's break this down scientifically, step by step. Now, I know what you're thinking. You've tried everything. You've eaten less. You've moved more. Maybe your doctor even handed you a calorie counting chart and said, "Just stick to this." And you did, but the scale barely budged. Or worse, the weight came back the moment you stopped restricting yourself. Here's the truth. Most of us were never taught calories do matter. Kind of, sort of, but not in the way we've been led to believe. Yes, eating 20,000 calories a day isn't a great idea, but obsessing over every calorie, that's missing the point entirely. Because what really decides whether your body stores fat or burns it isn't the number on the nutrition label. It's a hormone, a powerful one. And its name is insulin. Think of insulin as the gatekeeper. It controls whether energy from your food gets used right away, stored for later, or locked away in fat cells where you can't access it. And here's the kicker. You can be surrounded by all the food in the world. But without insulin, your cells can't do a thing with it. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine scientists take fat cells and place them in a petri dish. They give those cells a perfect environment, everything they need to thrive. Then, they add their favorite foods. Glucose, fatty acids, all the nutrients a fat cell could want. The cells are literally swimming in energy. Now, what do you think happens? Do they puff up and get fat? Nope. They stay tiny, pathetically small. Because without insulin, those cells are starving. They can't absorb the energy around them. They can't grow. It's like being locked outside a grocery store with bags of food on the other side of the glass. You can see it, but you can't touch it. But the moment the scientists add insulin to that dish, boom. Within hours, those fat cells blow up like balloons. Suddenly, they're storing everything in sight. Same amount of food, same cells. The only difference? Insulin. So, if insulin is the key that unlocks fat storage, then maybe, just maybe, we should be paying more attention to it than to calories alone. And there's even more proof of this. Proof that comes from one of the most well-understood medical conditions in the world, type 1 diabetes. There are around 10 million people globally living with type 1 diabetes. These individuals can't produce insulin on their own. And before we had the ability to give them insulin through injections, something tragic happened. They starved to death. Yes, you heard that right. They could eat enormous amounts of food, piles of it, and still waste away. Because without insulin, that food never made it into their cells. Their blood sugar would skyrocket, but their cells were empty. No energy, no fuel, just slow starvation, no matter how much they ate. That's why it used to be called juvenile diabetes. Kids would develop it young, and without treatment, they'd only survive a few years. It's heartbreaking, but it proves something critical. Insulin isn't just important for weight, it's essential for survival. Now, here's where it gets even more interesting. Some type 1 diabetics, whether by accident or on purpose, don't take quite enough insulin. Not zero, but not enough. And what happens? They lose weight, a lot of it. They get very, very thin because even though they're eating, their bodies can't store the energy properly. It slips right through. On the flip side, if a type 1 diabetic eats a lot of processed food, sugar, refined carbs, unhealthy oils, and just keeps upping their insulin dose to match, they can actually become overweight, even insulin resistant, Because too much insulin triggered too often eventually causes the same problem it does in the rest of us. Fat gets locked away, and the body can't access it. But let me be crystal clear here. If you're a type 1 diabetic, do not try to lose weight by cutting back on insulin. That path leads to dangerously high blood sugar, a condition called ketoacidosis, and it can be life-threatening. I'm not suggesting shortcuts. I'm explaining how the system works so we can all make smarter choices within the bounds of our health. So, here's what we've learned so far. Insulin is the gatekeeper. It decides whether your body stores fat or burns it. And while calories matter to some degree, they're not the main character in this story. Insulin is. Now, let's talk about what throws insulin out of balance in everyday life. Because once you see the cycle, you'll understand why so many people feel stuck. Imagine this. You wake up. You're told breakfast is the most important meal of the day. So, you grab something quick, maybe toast, cereal, orange juice, all carbs. Your blood sugar spikes. Insulin rushes in to deal with it. Your body stores some of that energy as fat. Couple hours later, your blood sugar crashes. You feel hungry again, tired, maybe a little foggy. So, what do? You eat again. Maybe a snack, more carbs, another insulin spike, another round of fat storage. And the cycle repeats. Lunch, mid-afternoon slump, dinner, late-night snack. Every time you eat something that raises blood sugar quickly, insulin goes up. And every time insulin goes up, fat storage gets turned on. But here's the cruel part. When insulin is constantly elevated, it doesn't just store fat. It also prevents your body from breaking down the fat you've already stored. The energy is right there on your hips, your belly, your thighs. But you can't use it. It's locked. So instead of burning your own reserves, you feel hungry. You eat more. You trigger more insulin. And the weight piles on. This is the trap. And it's not your fault. It's how the system works when we eat foods that constantly spike insulin, especially when we eat them all day long without giving our bodies a break. So, how do we break the cycle? How do we bring insulin back into balance naturally, without drugs, without starvation? That's where the insulin trick comes in. And it starts with understanding something your body does every single morning, whether you know it or not. It's called the dawn effect, and it's one of the most overlooked pieces of the weight loss puzzle. Here's what happens. In the early hours before you wake up, maybe around 4 or 5 in the morning, your body starts releasing a cocktail of hormones. Cortisol, human growth hormone, adrenaline, glucagon. Their job to get you ready for the day, to wake you up, to give you energy before you've had a chance to eat anything. These hormones work together to break down stored glycogen and convert it into glucose. They also break down a bit of fat and turn it into usable fuel. It's like your body's natural alarm clock, getting the engine warmed up before you even open your eyes. But here's the thing. When blood sugar rises, even naturally from these hormones, your body responds by releasing a little bit of insulin. Not as much as if you'd eaten a meal, but enough to matter. And because of this, you're actually slightly more insulin resistant in the morning than you are later in the day. So, let me ask you a question. Knowing all this, does it still sound like breakfast is the most important meal of the day? Think about it. Your body just spent the early morning raising your blood sugar and releasing hormones to give you energy. It's ready for you to get up and move, not sit down and eat. In fact, for most of human history, that's exactly what people did. They woke up, they moved, they looked for food. They didn't have a pantry stocked with cereal or a fridge full of leftovers. Food was something you had to go find. And that's why the dawn effect exists in the first place. It's an adaptation. It's your body preparing you to move, to hunt, to gather, not to sit at a table and load up on carbs. So, here's the first part of the insulin trick. And it's beautifully simple. Delay your breakfast. Wait at least 2 hours after waking before you eat your first meal. If you can wait even longer, say until lunchtime, even better. Why? Because by waiting, you allow those morning hormones to settle. You let your blood sugar come back down. You give your body a chance to become more insulin sensitive before you introduce food. And when you do finally eat, your body's in a much better position to handle it without spiking insulin through the roof. This is the foundation of something called intermittent fasting, which is just a fancy way of saying you eat your meals in a shorter window of time each day. Maybe you eat between noon and 6 in the evening, or maybe between 10 and 6. The exact timing can vary, but the principle is the same. Fewer meals, more time between them, and better alignment with your body's natural rhythms. And here's the bonus. During those fasting hours, you can still be active. You can plan your day, do some light chores, go for a walk. Your body has the energy it needs from the dawn effect. You're not starving. You're just letting your system reset. Then, when you do eat, focus on fat and protein. Eggs, avocado, nuts, cheese, fish, chicken. These foods don't spike your blood sugar the way toast or cereal or juice do. They keep your insulin stable, they satisfy you for hours, and they let your body stay in fat burning mode instead of fat storage mode. Now I know some of you might be thinking, but I've always eaten breakfast. Won't I be starving? And the answer is maybe for a few days. But here's what happens once your body adjusts. Once it realizes it can tap into your stored energy instead of waiting for the next meal, the hunger fades. You feel clear-headed, energized, steady. It's not about willpower. It's about working with your biology instead of against it. But even perfect timing won't help if another hormone keeps sabotaging you. And that hormone is cortisol, the same one involved in the dawn effect. Because while a little cortisol in the morning is natural and helpful, too much cortisol all day long is a disaster for your weight and your health. And guess what causes cortisol to stay elevated? Two big things: stress and poor sleep. Let me explain how this works. When you're stressed, really stressed, your body kicks into what we call a sympathetic response. It's the fight or flight system. Your heart beats faster. Blood rushes to your muscles. Your breathing quickens. All of this happens in a split second. That's the nervous system doing its job. But if that stress continues for more than a few moments, your body calls in reinforcements. And that reinforcement is cortisol. Cortisol's main job is to make sure you have enough energy to deal with whatever threat you're facing. So it raises your blood sugar. It pulls glucose out of storage and dumps it into your bloodstream, ready to fuel your muscles so you can run or fight. Now, in the wild, that's perfect. A predator chases you. Cortisol spikes. You run. You use up that energy. Crisis over. Cortisol drops. Everything returns to normal. But in modern life, the stress doesn't stop. Traffic jams, bills, family worries, health concerns, work deadlines. Your body doesn't know the difference between a lion and a late mortgage payment. It just knows you're stressed. So, cortisol stays elevated. And when cortisol stays elevated, so does your blood sugar. And when blood sugar stays elevated, so does insulin. And here's where it gets worse. Poor sleep has almost the same effect as chronic stress. Studies show that when you don't get enough sleep, or when your sleep is disrupted or shallow, your cortisol levels can double or even triple. It's like walking into the day already stressed, even if nothing bad has happened yet. And remember, cortisol raises blood sugar. Blood sugar triggers insulin. Insulin stores fat and prevents you from burning the fat you already have. It's a vicious cycle. And on top of all that, high cortisol makes you hungrier. It makes you less satisfied when you do eat. And it gives you cravings, especially for carbs and sugar. Your body is desperately looking for quick energy because it thinks you're in crisis mode. So, here's the second insulin trick. And it might sound almost too simple to matter, but trust me, it matters more than almost anything else. Sleep more and stress less. I know. Easier said than done. But here's the thing. You don't have to eliminate all stress overnight. You don't have to become a Zen master. You just need to start paying attention. Maybe it's 10 minutes of deep breathing before bed. Maybe it's a short walk in the fresh air. Maybe it's saying no to one extra commitment that's wearing you down. Small shifts, gentle changes, and sleep. Make it a priority, not something you get around to when everything else is done. Because sleep isn't just about rest. It's about metabolic health, brain health, emotional balance, hormone regulation. When you sleep well, your body can repair itself. It can balance insulin and cortisol. It can reset. And here's a key detail. It's not just about getting 7 or 8 hours. It's about when you sleep. Your body is designed to align with the natural light-dark cycle of the day. When you go to bed earlier, when you let yourself wake naturally with the light, your hormones work better. Your cortisol drops at night the way it's supposed to. Your melatonin rises. Everything syncs up. But even with great sleep and lower stress, there's still one more piece of the puzzle, and that's stabilizing your blood sugar throughout the day. Because if your blood sugar is bouncing up and down like a roller coaster, it doesn't matter how much you sleep or how calm you are. Your insulin will still be all over the place. So, what does stable blood sugar look like? A good benchmark is a fasting blood sugar around 85 mg per deciliter, somewhere in that range. And after you eat, it shouldn't rise much at all. Ideally, it stays under 105 or so. If you're doing keto or fasting regularly, it might go even lower than 85, and that's perfectly fine. Your body is just getting better at using fat for fuel. Now, how do you stabilize your blood sugar? It all comes down to what you eat. And this is where we circle back to what I said earlier. Build your meals around healthy fats and protein. These are your foundation. Butter, olive oil, avocados, fatty fish like salmon, eggs, meat, cheese if you tolerate it, nuts and seeds. Then, add plenty of fibrous vegetables, leafy greens, broccoli, cauliflower, zucchini, peppers. These give you volume, nutrients, and fiber without spiking your blood sugar. If you're not severely insulin resistant, if you can tolerate some carbs, you might add in a bit of legumes, lentils, chickpeas, black beans, but go easy. And always pair them with fat and protein to slow down the absorption. What you absolutely must cut back on, or better yet, eliminate, is sugar and refined starch. White bread, pasta, crackers, cookies, candy, soda, juice. These are the foods that send your blood sugar through the roof and trigger massive insulin spikes. And most processed foods are built on these ingredients. So, when you cut out processed foods, you're automatically cutting out the biggest insulin triggers. Now, here's why this matters so much for the insulin trick we're talking about. If you eat a lot of sugar and starch during the day, your blood sugar will swing wildly, and sometimes it crashes, especially at night. You might be sound asleep, and suddenly your blood sugar drops too low. Your body panics. It thinks you're starving. So it releases a surge of cortisol to bring your blood sugar back up. But remember what cortisol does? It blocks melatonin. Melatonin is your sleep hormone. So that cortisol spike wakes you up. You toss and turn. Your sleep gets disrupted. You wake up tired. And then, as we already covered, poor sleep raises cortisol even more the next day. You see the loop? Unstable blood sugar ruins your sleep. Poor sleep raises cortisol. High cortisol raises insulin. High insulin stores fat and makes you hungrier. And round we go. But when you stabilize your blood sugar by eating the right foods, that whole cycle stops. You sleep deeper, you wake up more refreshed, your cortisol stays in check, your insulin stays low, and your body can finally start burning fat the way it's supposed to. Now, let's talk about coffee, because this is where a lot of people get really confused. And honestly, a lot of misleading information floats around about coffee and insulin, especially in the morning. Here's the truth. Coffee, or more specifically, caffeine, does have a small effect on your hormones. It acts a little bit like adrenaline. It stimulates that sympathetic nervous system. It can give a slight boost to the dawn effect hormones we talked about earlier. And yes, in some people, especially those who are insulin resistant, caffeine can cause a small, temporary rise in insulin. But here's the key. That rise is tiny. It's nothing compared to what happens when you eat a carb-heavy breakfast. And for most people, especially if you're already insulin sensitive, it's not even noticeable. So, where does the confusion come from? Well, some people hear that coffee raises insulin in the morning and they think, oh no, I can't have coffee at all. But what they're missing is the context. Coffee plus a big plate of toast and jam and orange juice. Yes, that's a problem because now you've combined the dawn effect, the caffeine effect, and a massive carb load all at once. That's a perfect storm for an insulin spike. But black coffee by itself on an empty stomach, that's a completely different story. Because even if it nudges your insulin up a tiny bit, there's no food to store. There's nothing to turn into fat. Your body might release a little insulin, but it has nothing to do with it. So, it just fades away. Now, if you're someone who's very insulin resistant, if your fasting insulin is high, if your blood sugar is hard to control, then it might be worth waiting about 90 minutes after you wake up before you have your coffee. Just let those dawn hormones settle a little bit first. But even then, it's not the end of the world. The real villain is combining coffee with carbs, not the coffee itself. And if you're already insulin sensitive, if your fasting insulin is nice and low, your blood sugar is stable, then have your coffee. Enjoy it black or with a little cream or butter if you like. It's not going to ruin your progress. In fact, it might even help you stay focused and energized during your fasting window. So, here's where we've arrived. We've covered the 4 parts of the insulin trick. Delay your breakfast to sync with your body's natural rhythms. Sleep well, and manage stress to keep cortisol in check. Stabilize your blood sugar with the right foods. And use coffee wisely, without fear, but with awareness. Now, let me tie it all together into a simple, practical rhythm you can actually follow. Because the goal here isn't to make your life complicated. It's to make it easier to work with your body instead of fighting it every step of the way. When you wake up in the morning, don't rush to the kitchen. Give yourself time. Maybe stretch a little, plan your day. Do some light movement, a walk around the block, some gentle housework. Whatever feels good. Remember, the dawn effect gave you energy for exactly this reason. To move, not to eat. Then after at least 2 hours or longer if you're doing intermittent fasting, have your first meal and make it a good one. Eggs with avocado, salmon with greens, a big salad with olive oil and grilled chicken. Fat and protein first, plenty of fiber, very little starch or sugar. If you want coffee, have it either with your meal or 90 minutes after waking, depending on how insulin sensitive you are. But keep it simple, black or with a touch of healthy fat, no sugar, no syrup. Throughout the day, keep your meals to a reasonable window, maybe 6 to 8 hours. This gives your body long stretches where insulin is low, where it can tap into stored fat for energy, where it can rest and repair instead of constantly digesting. Finish your last meal at least 3 to 4 hours before bed. This is important. When you go to bed on a full stomach, your body is still working to digest. Your blood sugar might spike in the night. Your sleep suffers. But when you give yourself that buffer, your body can focus on deep, restorative sleep. And speaking of sleep, make it sacred. Dim the lights an hour before bed. Put away the screens. Let your body know it's time to wind down. Try to align your sleep with the natural dark hours. This isn't about perfection. It's about consistency. And finally, build your lifestyle around whole foods. Real foods. Foods that don't come in crinkly packages with ingredient lists you can't pronounce. When you eat this way, when you prioritize fat, protein, fiber, and minimize sugar, and starch, you're not just controlling insulin. You're dramatically lowering your risk of almost every modern chronic disease. Heart disease, diabetes, dementia, inflammation, all of it improves when your insulin is in balance. So, here's the bottom line. Your body is not broken. It's not betraying you. It's just responding to the signals you're giving it. And for most of us, we've been giving it the wrong signals. Eating too often, eating the wrong foods, not sleeping enough, living in constant stress. But when you understand how insulin works, when you respect the dawn effect, when you align your eating with your biology instead of fighting it, everything changes. You don't have to count every calorie. You don't have to starve yourself. You just have to cooperate with the system that's been running inside you since the day you were born. And the beautiful thing, these aren't extreme changes. They're small, sustainable shifts. Delay breakfast, sleep better, eat real food, move a little. Give your body time between meals. That's it. No magic pills, no expensive programs, just patience, consistency, and respect for how your body actually works. If this video helped you see weight loss in a completely new way, if it made you realize that maybe, just maybe, it's not about willpower or calorie charts but about insulin and timing and biology, then I'd love for you to join this community. Hit that subscribe button, turn on the notifications, share your own story in the comments. Let's keep learning together how to stay healthy, strong, and vibrant at every age. Because you deserve to feel good in your body. You deserve to have energy. You deserve to understand why things work the way they do. And most of all, you deserve to know that it's never too late to make a change that matters. Let's keep exploring how to stay biologically young, one small, smart change at a